The following content may contain visuals that are disturbing, graphic, or sensitive in nature. Viewer discretion is advised. This material is intended for mature audiences and may not be suitable for all viewers. Please exercise caution while watching, and if you find such content distressing, we recommend discontinuing viewing. This disclaimer is provided to ensure awareness and to prioritize viewer well-being.
The International Court of Justice today stopped short of ordering Israel to suspend its military campaign in Gaza, but said Israel must ensure with immediate effect that its military does not commit any acts which could fall foul of the Genocide Convention. In other words, the UN's top court ruled that Israel must take all measures to prevent genocidal acts in Gaza, but stop short of ordering an immediate ceasefire. The court delivered its interim ruling in South Africa's genocide case against Israel. However, a verdict on South Africa's allegation against Israel that it has carried out a genocide in Gaza could take years to come. Israel strongly denies the accusation, calling it baseless. It has accused South Africa of bias. The court did not agree to South Africa's request for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, something that will perhaps disappoint the South Africans and Palestinians alike. But by large majorities, the court's 17 judges ruled, amongst other measures, that Israel should do everything in its power to avoid killing Palestinians, causing them serious bodily or mental harm, or imposing measures intended to prevent Palestinian women from giving birth. Additionally, the court ruled that Israel must take measures to ensure humanitarian access to Gaza. It must prevent any destruction of evidence that could be used in a genocide case in the future, and it must submit a report to the court within 1 month. The International Court of Justice also expressed grave concern about the fate of the hostages being held by Hamas and called for their immediate release. Israel has reacted to this judgment with anger, as expected. Netanyahu has, in fact, slammed the International Court of Justice, once again calling these allegations baseless. Now, the court's rulings are in a sense binding, but there is no enforcement mechanism in place. Israel could simply choose to ignore what the judges have said altogether, but with diplomatic efforts now concentrating on the possibility of a longer ceasefire compared to the last one, which lasted all of 1 week, and efforts still being made to improve the flow of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip, Israel may argue that it's already taking steps to meet the court's demands. In fact, it has made that argument. Now, according to the Hamas-run health ministry, Israel's retaliatory attacks in Gaza have killed almost 26,000 Palestinians, mostly women and children. The war began after Hamas attacked southern Israel on the 7th of October, killing about 1,200 people, mostly civilians, and taking 240 hostages. US media reports say the head of the CIA, America's intelligence agency, is due to meet Israeli, Qatari, and Egyptian officials in the coming days to discuss a new potential ceasefire in Gaza.
Israel's commitment to international law is unwavering. Equally unwavering is our sacred commitment to continue to defend our country and defend our people. Like every country, Israel has an inherent right to defend itself. The vile attempt to deny Israel this fundamental right is blatant discrimination against the Jewish state, and it was justly rejected. The charge of genocide leveled against Israel is not only false, it's outrageous, and decent people everywhere should reject it. On the eve of the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, I again pledge as Israel's Prime Minister, never again. Israel will continue to defend itself against Hamas, a genocidal terror organization. On October 7th, Hamas perpetrated the most horrific atrocities against the Jewish people since the Holocaust, and it vows to repeat these atrocities again and again and again. Our war is against Hamas terrorists, not against Palestinian civilians. We will continue to facilitate humanitarian assistance and to do our utmost to keep civilians out of harm's way, even as Hamas uses civilians as human shields. We will continue to do what is necessary to defend our country and defend our people.
In battered, hard-to-reach North Gaza, rare aid deliveries are mobbed by hungry Palestinians. Aid workers report seeing people thin and visibly starving with sunken eyes. Hunger stalks the entire Gaza Strip, where 2.3 million people live under Israeli bombardment. The United Nations warned this week that pockets of Gaza face famine. Areas near the Egyptian border get limited supplies of imported food. But not the north, says World Health Organization Emergency Coordinator Sean Casey.
The food situation in the north is absolutely horrific. There's almost no food available, and everybody we talk to begs for food and comes to us and asks, where's the food?
Medics in Gaza hospitals describe babies born sick to malnourished mothers, infants losing weight, mothers unable to produce breast milk, and injured patients too weak from hunger to fight off infection. Jabbar Sha'ir is a paediatric doctor at An-Najah Hospital in Rafah.
A month and a half ago, this baby's weight was 7.5 kilos. In a month and a half, he lost nearly 2 kilos. His weight is now 5.5 kilos. The mother and the baby suffer from malnutrition. No milk is available, which all impacts the growth of the baby. He lost 2 kilos. This is bad. It impacts his immunity. He constantly has inflammation in the chest and gastroenteritis.
Scenes of chaos and gunfire during an aid distribution in Gaza City in this video verified by Reuters.
Now the occupation forces are opening fire on citizens as they receive humanitarian aid in the north of the Gaza Strip, in Al Zaytun neighborhood. This is the sound of gunfire. These are the scenes.
At the start of the war, after a Hamas assault that killed more than 1,200 people, Israel announced it was cutting off all supplies to Gaza. It has since let in humanitarian aid, but far less is entering the enclave now than before. Palestinians interviewed by Reuters said they often went days without eating, or could only eat once a day. What food is commercially available is often unaffordable. In Khan Yunis, Palestinian mother Hannah Naufal is displaced, like most Gazans. She opens a single can of beans for her 5 children.
It has been nearly 100 days while eating this canned food. The children are suffering a lot and getting sick. The situation is really bad for them. They have a lot of diseases. We could not even bring medications for them. It is difficult to bring medications. What can I tell you? There are no supplies to buy. We are all depending on canned food, and the canned food is really bad.
No comprehensive data on hunger is available for Gaza, with aid agencies struggling to move and communicate amid the fighting. UNICEF projects that in the coming weeks, more than 10,000 children in Gaza risk wasting, one of the most serious results of malnutrition, which can stunt physical growth and brain development. Heather Stobor of Action Against Hunger says children are at highest risk of dying.
Severe acute malnutrition that you've mentioned before is the deadliest form of hunger, and it's the biggest threat right now in Gaza.
Aid agencies say Israeli checks are hampering aid deliveries into Gaza, and the military prevents distribution outside the southern area around Rafah. Israeli government spokesperson Eylon Levy has denied such limitations and put any problems down to UN distribution capacity.
If we look for a solution, it's always possible. It's only the will that's required. And I'm a true believer, because of my own experience, that war doesn't bring solution, except more war, more hatred, more agony, more destruction. Struggling to speak because the situation is beyond words. 70% of the dead are children and women. That alone is enough for a ceasefire. The risk of epidemics is increasing, and people will die because of that as well. And people are facing death or risk of death because of hunger and starvation and famine. If you add all that, I think it's not easy to understand how hellish the situation is.
All right, joining me at this point is Dr. Ido Zelkovitz from Israel and Ambassador Suresh Goyal, a former Indian diplomat. Thanks very much to both of you for joining me. Ambassador Suresh Goyal, let me start with you. The International Court of Justice has essentially said Israel must take all measures to prevent genocidal acts in Gaza. It said a number of other things which I mentioned at the start of the show, but for all the high-sounding words that the top court has used, you know, it would seem like it's actually said very little, because the court could have asked for a ceasefire, but it did not. Frankly, I would say this interim ruling of the International Court of Justice comes as a huge disappointment to many people who were hoping that, you know, some important institution was going to finally read the Riot Act to Israel.
Yes, Neha. So what does one say on this, really? Frankly speaking, the decision given by ICJ is on the basis of majority of the judges who are there on the bench. They will take their cue from the various factors. Evidence has been presented, etc., both by South Africa and Israel. ICJ has decided in a particular direction without really asking for either ceasefire or declaring that it's a genocide. It has asked for Israel to ensure humanitarian access into Gaza, which Israel says it is doing, but on what basis, what, how, etc., is a different matter. So that's all I can say. It's a disappointment, yes. I think there were many countries who were looking for more on that account. South Africa perhaps could ask for, could again go to ICJ, ask for more, but I doubt very much that we can expect much more out of it, really. Yes, so I've said words which are meaningless, but yes, that is where we are.